Hey Eagle fans, this is EaglefanKarl. This is going to be my reaction to the Monday night win against the Redskins and my prediction video for Sunday's game against the 49ers. And looking at the game against the Redskins, I've got to say, looking at that game, I really have, it scares me to say this, but I think we are really an elite team, and we've gotten to that status because those are the kinds of games that elite teams win because we started that game off horribly. And if you look at the first 20, 25 minutes of that game, we were just not playing well. And yet we found a way to come back and win. The fact that we were up 7 points going in at halftime completely blew me away with the way that first half went. And then, of course, we came out in the second half and we absolutely took care of business. But that's a way elite teams win games, and it really was impressive to see for that reason. So for that reason, there's really not going to be much for me to say for the duds this week. Number 3 dud of the week is going to be the referees, and I'm putting them further down the list because it really didn't hurt us, but they were just way too flag happy especially the first part of that game. It was getting ridiculous how many flags they were throwing, and it started to get irritating. John Gruden, I think, even made a point of saying, games like this are difficult to, do announcing on because of how, it just really breaks up the flow of everything and nothing really gets going because you have a penalty on like every other play. So it just seemed like it was one of those games where, Ed Hockley had to get his certain amount of time on TV, so they were going to call flags so that he could get his face, shown on ESPN. But it just really, I think, broke up the flow of the game. And for that reason, the refs once again are going to end up on my duds list. My number 2 dud is going to be a little bit unfair, but I'm going to say Najee Good. And I'm saying it's unfair, obviously, because he got put in a difficult situation. Second play from scrimmage, and we lose Jordan Hicks for the whole game and for the rest of the season, for that matter. But really, he obviously did not play well, and they ended up giving up some of those passes across the middle. It really could have been a lot worse. The defense really, I think, bailed us out in the first half, and I'll get to some of the defensive players in a minute. But I think Najee Good just sort of, as a result, sort of had a below average game because of what was going on. My number 1 dud of the week, and he's landed on this list before for the same reason, and that is, does anybody know if Torrey Smith still plays for this team? He had one play in the game that he made, according to the stat sheet, and that was he touched the guy down after he intercepted the ball on that long throw that, Carson threw up when we were deep in our own territory. So he touched the guy down, so he got credit for a tackle. That was the only play he made in the whole game. He wasn't targeted again after that. And it just sort of ended up being, a crazy, where is he? And last time I did this, he then had a really good game the next week. So hopefully that'll happen again. But he has been a disappointment this year. He just has been absolutely invisible. And at this point, it really is starting to concern me as to, what we're going to do with him next year. He's on a 3-year deal that I know that they can get out of after one. And I'm thinking that the Eagles are going to have to do that. And I really didn't want to have them turn over their whole receiving core. But that's a question for another day. But right now, he's just been absolutely invisible. But let's go ahead and look at the good and look at the studs for the week. As a result of this game, I've decided I'm really going to try and limit myself to 5 studs a game. Because it can really get sort of, I could have given out a lot of stud awards for this game. But because of that, I am going to go ahead and give some honorable mentions. The honorable mentions have got to go to Doug Peterson. He certainly was a guy, I think, once again, when you win a game like that, and just absolutely, they made some critical in-game adjustments and really, I think, put that team away in the second half. So hats off to the coach. The head coach is always going to get credit when something like that happens. So my hat's off to Doug Peterson. Another one is Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, once again, had a great game. So you've got to really give him credit. He's been really critical, I think, for a lot of Carson's success that he's had in this part of this for the first half of the season. And so once again, Zach Ertz had another great game. The other guy that continues to amaze me and surprise me based on how he was last year is Nelson Agholor. He's also going to get an honorable mention from me. And there was one play in particular, right after Jason Peters goes down. It was a real critical time, and there was a pass that Carson threw to Nelson Agholor that he sort of juggled, and he held on to it. That's not a catch he makes last year. It just shows how much his confidence has really grown. And for that reason, you really have to, give a lot of credit for where Nelson Agholor has come this year. And for that, he's going to make my honorable mentions. And the last honorable mention is the other wide receiver, gets his first career touchdown, Mac Hollins, on that really long play. I'm going to give him a lot of credit because that was a real big play, I think, that really sort of started the way that game turned. It was the first touchdown for us, and it really sort of ended up being the turning point of that game. But then let's go ahead and look at the 5 studs for the week. And I am going to cheat a little bit if there's some overlap on some players. So number 5 is going to be Jason Peters and Vaitai. I'm not going to try and say his first name. And because of just the way that whole thing went down, first of all, Jason Peters has just always been a great player for us. The fact that we're not going to have him for the rest of the season is really heartbreaking. And it really is concerning to me as well. It's actually more concerning to me than the Hicks injury. And that's because he's blocking the backside of Carson Wentz. And if he goes out, we're really if Carson goes out, we're really in trouble. So that's such a critical spot to keeping him healthy and keeping him safe. But really, Big V stepped right in and really played well for the second half of that game. But Jason Peters, from the stories that came out after that game, it really just sort of blew me away. The fact that, they said that, as he was on the cart, he's pulling his offensive line coach over and telling him some things that he can relay to Vaitai so that he can play better. And that just goes to show what a leader Jason Peters is. And he's really been a class act for us. He's been a great player for years for us. And it just goes to show that he's still thinking about the team. He's still thinking about what we need to do to win, even as he's being carted off for a major knee injury that he probably sitting there on that cart knew down deep that was probably the end of his season. But he's still trying to help out the guy that's going to be coming in place of him. So for that reason, those 2 guys, you're on my studs of the week. My number 4 stud of the week is going to be Jim Schwartz. And that's really just because of the way the whole defense played. It's been real interesting the way Jim Schwartz has sort of gone about his season this year. He hasn't blitzed a lot except in the 2 Redskins games. And I think that has to do with the fact that he's tailoring his defense to the quarterback. And he knows that Kirk Cousins doesn't like a lot of pressure. And ironically, if you looked at the stats before the game, the Redskins had 8 sacks that they had given up this year. 4 of them came in the first week against us. And he gave up 4 again against us this past Monday night. So if you look at their whole sacks total for the year, they've got 12. 8 of them belong to the Eagles. And a lot of that is scheme and design. A lot of it's the players that we have on our defensive line. But really, I think that the way Jim Schwartz was using that defense, really, I think it was what kept us in that game for the first half. That then feeds right into my number 3 stud of the week, and that's got to be the rookie Derek Barnett. Comes up with his 2 first solo sacks. He had a half sack before, but this is his first solo sack, his first 2 solo sacks that he got this week, and he was really a force. It's nice to see him finally coming along, and I think it's one of those things that those rookies, sometimes I don't think they realize just how much of a jump it is in competition between college and pros. But hopefully this is a turning point for him in the season and he can get things going. So for that reason, Derek Barnett, I had a lot of hopes for you when they drafted you and you came through. Therefore, you're my number 3 stud of the week. My number 2 stud of the week, though, and it's really going to be for one play, but it's also for what he means for the defense as a whole, and that's Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins is the leader of that defense, and really, I think it just is really goes to how much that defense played, and Jenkins is also such an integral part of that. You lose the quarterback of your defense early in the game in Jordan Hicks, and Malcolm Jenkins then had to probably do a lot of those same types of things that Hicks was doing in terms of calling out defenses and calling out coverages, and he did a great job. But really the one play that really sort of blew me away was a tackle he made on Jordan Reed in a really critical situation. Let me go ahead and set the picture for you. The Redskins have the ball around their own 40-yard line. It's 3rd and 1. There's about 6.5 to 7 minutes left in the first half, and we're down 10-3. And if they get any sort of drive going there and are able to get points on that, then it really sort of changes the whole way that game plays out, because then we're down 2 scores, and it really, I think, could have changed things. So this was a big play early in the game. So it's a really critical play, and it's an important stop to make. And Kirk Cousins completes a pass out in the flat to Jordan Reed, right almost at the sticks. and Malcolm Jenkins comes up and hits him immediately and drops him before he can turn to get over the yard to gain. And that's all Jordan Reed would have had to do, is just turn his body and they would have had the first down. Malcolm Jenkins doesn't even let him do that. As soon as he catches the ball, he tackles him. And it wasn't even a situation where Malcolm Jenkins was lined up right across from him. Reed was actually in motion on that play. And so Malcolm Jenkins really had to come from a distance to sort of make that tackle. And it was such a huge, important play in making that stop, because then it's fourth and it was less than 1 at that point. They decide to punt back to us. And then right after that is the possession where we score our first touchdown. And so as a result, that play was just such a huge turning point in the game. And you've got to really give credit to Malcolm Jenkins for making that huge stop. For my number one stud of the week, though, wasn't really any question who I was going to pick. My shirt should have been a giveaway on that. This was the second primetime game in a row now where Carson has really played a good game. And it goes to show how he just continues to develop as a leader on this team and as a quarterback in the league in general. If you followed my tweets during the game, you know that this was an important game historically for Carson Wentz for 2 reasons. Number one, he's now only the second quarterback in franchise history to have 3 consecutive games with 3 or more touchdown passes. And the last guy to do it was Bobby Thomason back in the early 50s. So that just goes to show, we've had a lot of quarterbacks between now and then that have played that have been really good, that still none of them had ever done this, throw 3 or more touchdown passes in 3 straight games. So that was really an impressive thing, especially when you consider, this goes back to the Cardinals game. Before that Cardinals game, he hadn't thrown more than 2 touchdown passes in any game. So it really just shows now in the last 3 games, he's thrown 11 touchdown passes. It's really sort of amazing how much of a step forward he has taken. Another great stat I saw was the fact that in the last 3 games, Carson Wentz has more touchdown passes than I think over half the teams in the league do for the whole season. So that right there is just really mind-boggling how far he's come in such a short amount of time. But it's even more amazing what he did when you consider how they started. He was horrible. He was 2 for 7. He had 24 yards passing and an interception. Now, the interception, I'm not going to really give him too much grief on, because they were that deep in their own territory. That actually almost acted like a punt and probably gave us better field position in terms of where the Redskins were going to start that drive than if we had punted from back there. So for that reason, I am not going to really knock him for that interception. But still, the fact that you're 2 for 7, 24 yards, and you really, the offense is struggling. Then, once again, about the 6.5 minutes left in the first half, it's like something changed, and then he was just amazing the rest of the game. From there, he went 15 for 18, 244 yards, 4 touchdown passes. The difference in the passer rating was insane. He had a 1.8 passer rating before that, and then once again, at that 6.5 minute mark left in the first half, he then had a perfect passer rating for the rest of the game. So, it was amazing the way that changed. And really a lot of it had to do with the fact that they went up tempo. And I think that started to get Carson into a rhythm. And once he was in that rhythm, there was no getting him out of it. The other play we have to talk about, though, is the running play he made on 3rd and 8 at the beginning of the 4th quarter. It's 3rd and 8. At that point, we're up 7 points. If they get a stop there, they can go down and tie up the game. So it's important that we try and get something going on that drive. That's the play where obviously that looks like they've got him, and suddenly he breaks out and gets the huge gain. But that's a play that just shows how much of a tough guy he is, and he's not going to back down, and he's always going to try and make sure that his team is going to have as much of a chance to win a game and try and make as many plays as he can so that can happen. I had said that the game was big for 2 reasons, and I never gave you the second reason. And the second reason has to do with the fact that, he's now already got more touchdown passes in the first 7 games of this season than he had in all of last season. He had 16 touchdown passes last year. He's already got 17 this year, and he leads the league, by the way, in touchdown passes. So really, everything's still going uphill for Carson Wentz. Hopefully it continues to stay on that rise and he continues that progression, because I really think he is now on the brink of becoming one of the greats, if not already one of the great quarterbacks in the league right now. There's not too many quarterbacks right now that are the way that he's playing that you would take over him right now. And most of that would just have to do with the fact of, the history that those players have and how long they've been doing it. That's the only reason you might take them over him, because right now, I don't think there's anybody in the league that's playing better at the quarterback position than Carson Wentz is. Let's go ahead then and turn our attention to Sunday afternoon's game against the 49ers. Looking at the records, there's no reason the Eagles should lose this game. You've got the team with the best record in the league, and the Eagles going up against a team that hasn't won yet. Right there, it should be an easy win for us. And you couple that with the fact of, just the way these teams match up against each other, there's no reason we should lose this game. And I know there's been some people that say, well, there's going to be bad weather and all that kind of stuff. I think the bad weather, if it does anything, it'll just keep the game closer. I don't really think it's going to change the outcome of the game, because if the 49ers were a good running team and were good at stopping the run, then yeah, maybe that would be the case, because it would force us to run the ball and they would be able to run the ball effectively against us, not worrying that trying to pass the ball. And then maybe that would be it. But that's not the way the 49ers are. And that's because the 49ers are 23rd in rushing offense and they're 30th in rushing defense. So, and for the flip side of that, the Eagles are the number 1 team against the run on defense, and we're 4th in the league in running the ball on offense. So right there, if anything, that should play to our favor, not to our disadvantage. I know a lot of people have been focused on what Carson Wentz has done the last 3 games in terms of all the touchdown passes. But really, if you look at the success we had over the course of the whole season, it's been the running game that's really allowed him to have some success in the passing game, because teams now really have to worry about our running game. And the 49ers really shouldn't be able to run the ball, because they're not that good of a running team anyway, and we're especially good against the run. So it's for those reasons I don't see the weather playing a factor. You look across the board, the statistics favor the Eagles. I think the only way the Eagles lose this game is if they really beat themselves with turnovers and penalties and all those kind of things. And I just don't see this Eagles team doing that. So for that reason, I think the Eagles are going to win this game. I think they're going to win it relatively easily. My prediction for the score is going to be Eagles 31, 49ers 13. Let me know what you think. First of all, on the Redskins game, do you agree or disagree with my studs and duds? And then for the 49ers game, let me know your predictions and give me an idea of what you think is going to happen in the game and the score. After the 49ers game, I'll go ahead and check in again. Until then, fly Eagles fly.